Hello, and welcome back again to Playmaker's Alley. On today's episode, we're going to focus around the basics of offensive logic. Now, offenses, what they're looking to do is to move the ball, is to manipulate space. And there are a variety of ways in which they can look to manipulate space. Examples being they can look to influence the space, either look to isolate the space, or simply overwhelm the space, amongst another variety of ways of doing it. So, in order to understand some of the key parameters or attributes that offenses look when they're deciding how they're going to look to move the ball, we have to understand what that space is. So, what I'll start off with is basically just explain to you what the space in which we're working is, or the football field, what it looks like, and define that. So, we've got essentially with the football field standard is 100, well, everyone defines it by 100 yards, and that is true. The playing field in between the two end zones is 100 yards, and then the end zones themselves are also an additional amount of yardage either side, usually 10. And then you have the kicking posts at the end of either end zone. So a field is generally 120 yards, but the playing area is 100 yards. Fun fact: in Britbowl, most of the playing areas on the field are 90 yards generally, because we don't have purpose built American football fields, so they repurpose football fields, rugby fields, and they're not long enough to have the end zones, to have the post at the end of the end zones, and the playing area still be 100 yards. So generally, a lot of American football fields in the UK and around Britbowl will be 90 yards, some a little bit less. So you have the playing area. Then that playing area is a rectangle of 100 yards. Now, in from the sideline of the playing area, you will have what is known as the numbers. Either side of the pitch, there are numbers that are drawn onto the field, a set distance away from the sideline. That doesn't matter now in terms of understanding the space, and they will be at each 10 yard marker line. So you have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then back down. So 40, 30, 20, 10. Then in from the numbers, what you will have is you will have the hashes, or a hash. A hash, where a hash is basically, it's a dashed line that's marked within the field, a certain distance horizontally from the numbers or from the sideline, and it's given at each and every yard marker. And that hash is where the ball will be placed if any on a given play the ball is stopped in and around that area of the field in terms of horizontally. So it'll be stopped vertically where they've gained the distance, whatever yardage they've gained, and then it'll be placed on one of the hashes, either the left or the right hash, because the pitch is mirrored. So we've got the 100 yard or 90 yard field if it's playing area. If it's in Britbowl, then have your 10 yard end zones. You have your posts on either end. Then looking at splitting the field in half, you would have the sideline. In from the sideline, you have the numbers. In from the numbers, you have the hash, and then you just mirror that, and it's the exact same. So you have a left and a right hash, and the ball is either placed on a hash or is placed in the middle of the field. And that is essentially the space in which we work in, or the offense works in, within the game of American football works in. And what I've just defined there, without necessarily all the technical dimensions, is the football field. So that's the space in which they're looking to try and manipulate. Now, in terms of what will help define their logic in terms of looking to move the ball and meet their ultimate goal of getting to the end zone, the first thing is, based on where the ball is placed, assuming that which vast majority of plays is placed on one of the hashes, that's either the left or the right hash, what you end up with is a wide side of the field and a short side of the field. The wide side of the field, often denoted as just the field, it's the larger side, and the short side of the field is often denoted as the boundary. So deciding as to which way, based on where the ball is placed, they're looking to initially attack the field or the boundary. That's one of the things that will define how the offense looks to move the ball. Generally, it will be, or as a starting point, it will be to the field, or it will be to the wide side of the wide side of the playing field, because that's just where more space is. And in more space, when you get the people you want to get the ball to out in space, they can do more things if there's a larger amount of space to utilize. And another quick and fun thing around in the Britbowl game at all levels, but be that university or domestically and internationally, the hashes are based on the American college football hashes, which differ from the NFL hashes, so are slightly wider than the NFL hashes, which are slightly narrow, which are narrower. So we've got field and boundary, or the wide side and the short side of the field, is one way that is one of the key parameters for the offense. The next one will be their formation. So that's just how they choose to line up their set given players. And in these formations, every single formation will have what is known as a passing strength and a running strength. Now, when these concepts are being taught, particularly to offensive players, they may not look at it this way, but defensively, we will generally assess it via or acknowledge the passing strength and the running strength, and that's because it helps us align and set up our defense as to how we want to play against it. So all formations have a running strength and a passing strength. And then the overall formation will normally lean more towards either a run-heavy formation or a pass-heavy formation. Thinking of it basically, generally, pass-heavy formations will be formations where the receivers you have are more spread out away from the big guys who are around the ball. Run-heavy formations, you'll have more people in and around the ball. And that's just as a basic principle. Now, because you're in a run-heavy or a pass-heavy formation, that doesn't immediately mean that you can't do the opposite. So in a run heavy formation doesn't mean you can't pass the ball. In a pass heavy formation doesn't mean you can't run the ball. It's just that formation has built-in benefits that make it easier to do whichever way it's more leaning. If you have a lot of people in and around and close to the ball, then it's easier to run the ball and create lanes and create gaps right off the bat, and to implement that. If you have a lot of guys spread out, they're in space. If you throw the ball, they're going to catch it in space. They're going to be able to move. So, the next thing, as I stated, the formations always have a running strength and a passing strength. They can be married together or they can be devoid. And you may not, if you're learning the offense, be taught it that way. But defensively, it matters because it helps us as to how we're going to look to set up. And in terms of passing strength formations, generally, that will be whichever side has the most receivers. If the receiver count is balanced on either side, then it'll be based on how the formation looks. So if you have two people out in space on one side and not two people out in space on the other side, but there are two receivers either side of the formation, then we normally call the passing strength to the side that has the most receivers in space. So though that's balanced, it has the most receivers in space. While the running strength is based off of, generally, it'll be based off if you decide to bring, if you have more players in and around the box, or you have more receivers, you have some of your receivers line up in and around the box, and if it's perfectly balanced, then it will generally be based off of the look of the running back, and you define it based off of that. So what we've gone through is that you have where the ball's placed, and that creates essentially a wide side and a short side of the field and boundary. You then have the formation that the offense chooses to line up in, and then that will have a passing strength and a running strength, and depending on which one you utilize might dictate which plays you try and call out from it. And then the final thing I want to touch up on the video today will be the personnel. So when I talk about personnel, it's essentially what sort of body types and skill sets do you have on the field. So within American football, you have to have a given number of a position known as offensive line. Then you will have 5 what they refer to as skill players that are a mix of running backs and receivers. And then you have the QB. Although on the next episode I'll touch more on the actual positions of the players. But based on that makeup of your skill players, do you have a bunch of guys who you think are more likely, you want them to be able to block and come downhill heavy? Do you have a lot of faster, speedier, catch heavy guys? You might be in a formation that have you spread out. But your personnel grouping will define the strengths in which your offense has and what sort of plays you might look to run in order to play to those strengths. So to quickly summarize, you have the formation, where the ball's placed and where that where that creates a wide side of the field and a short side of the field. And then you have your personnel. So what type of skill sets and body types do you have on the offense? And those three attributes, depending on how offenses decide to use that, or decide what choices they decide to make, whether to always attack the wide side, attack the short side, have a heavy pass strong formations, heavy run strong formations, have your pass formations into the short side of the field or the boundary, or have your pass formations into the wide side of the field, and then the personnel groupings you have or the body types you have and how you set those formations. The mix of those three key attributes will assess or will assign what the identity of an offense you're going up against. So how coordinators or coaches decide to utilize those three aspects will define the identity of the offense. And when you marry that with plays, that is what essentially you're looking to run. So it gives you there are a lot of combinations, a lot of different things you can do with those three attributes and the plays you choose to run. Implementing stuff, particularly on offense, can be extremely difficult because you have to have everyone on the same page, and it can be repping this a lot, can take a lot of time. So generally, you won't have teams that run absolutely everything. It's not feasible. It doesn't make sense. So the choice in which you make and what you choose to do, and what plays you choose to run with those choices, will define your identity. And understanding how you want to utilize where the ball's going to be placed, what formations you want to come out in, and the personnel and body types you have in your team will help you decide how in which you want to look to move the ball and ultimately get it to the end zone. So that's the basics of offensive logic. Not gone into any detail around the plays in which they run or around some more advanced things such as matchups. It's just how, if you had a plain sheet, would you look to go, okay, cool, what do I need to look to assess to decide how I want to build my offense and do things on offense? These are three fundamental things that if your teams match up very well, you can utilize it. If you have overwhelming strength, you can still utilize it. Catch you in the next episodes of Playmakers Alley, where we'll go into a little bit more detail around offense a little bit more, as well as the actual positions on the field. Because I know so far, with all the videos I've sent out, we haven't touched upon the actual what are the positions on the field and what happens. But you haven't needed to know that to understand some of these principles. But I'll catch you later. Thanks again for watching. See you in a bit.